Well, welcome to Enigma Day number 12 already. We're delighted today to be with Ernie Gruner in Melbourne. And Ernie, without further ado, I'm going to spotlight you and perhaps you can tell us what your enigma for today is going to be.
Thank you, Ilana, and welcome everyone to the spotlight. So, my nigun, one of the ones that Ilana allocated to me, is number 90 from the Beregovski Tish-Nigunim collection, or table tunes. Um, and this one, like many of them, have got metronome times. I'm going to play it a little bit slower because that's just what I feel like. But what I do feel like is it's a table thumping song, like thump, thump, thump. I'm not sure if that's going to interfere with the video, so I won't do it on this. Or I might if I get carried away.
Uh, very uplifting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen those sort of things, those sort of tunes where people are sitting on tables, actually men, sitting around tables with cakes and Coca-Cola and whiskey and vodka, and they sing those sort of songs. The first time I saw it being sung with women was in Klezmer, Canada, in Montreal in 2008, where they sing Nigunim on the Friday night Sabbath. Anyway, yeah, I like that one, and I'm glad to have that added to my collection because I can't remember if I've got any other tunes like that in 3/4. Everything else is in 2/4 or 4/4. So thank you, Alana.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, there were 158 to choose from, and I had 35 people to distribute them among, so it was a little bit random, but I'm
Yeah, fair enough.
glad you like it. Did you mention that you might have a Niggin challenge in case people have extensive knowledge of the genre?
Yeah, sure. I'll play that. I've also got another tune from the ones that you allocated to me. So just the backstory for this one. I haven't heard it that often, but I heard it twice at Simca's at Jewish functions, usually weddings. Um, and the second time I heard it was at the Melbourne Zoo, where after a chuppah and a wedding reception, um, everything was happening in one of the big function rooms at the zoo. And I heard this thing again, and I got very excited. After playing it, I quickly whipped out a pen and paper and scribbled down the notes. And I think I've only heard it once before. So I don't know where it comes from, but I call it the zoo niggin. And so on for about 15 minutes. That second bit makes me think it's not that old, but I don't think it's a Carlebach. I don't know what it is. So,
If anybody knows, they should write in.
yeah, there'll be a prize. I don't know what the prize will be, but
Trip to the zoo, maybe.
a trip to the zoo. Yes, I love the zoo. Show me a good meerkat.
But maybe not right away. Not a,
Right, right. Yeah.
gosh. So what's your klezmer journey been like, Ernie? When did you first hear a niggin or klezmer in general? What was your
So, oh, Naomi, thank you. This is good to hear. I'll get back to you. So I first heard this in about 89, 1999 or 1990. I After playing a lot of classical music and training in that, I went to Irish music and I did that for years. And I was invited to play in an early Melbourne world music band, and we played a mixture of different styles: Greek, Turkish, Macedonian, etc., and one klezmer piece. And I really liked it. And the accordion player, Audrey Fine, gave me a cassette of klezmer, and I was hooked. Many, many years later, Audrey and I collaborated, or have collaborated for years, running what we call a klezmer gypsy dance. Anyway, the that cassette got me hooked, and then a couple of years later, or actually not long after that, Michael Alpert, the great fiddle player and singer and dance caller, etc., came out, and I went to his workshops. That was run by the Kadima, the Yiddish Centre in Melbourne, and they were fabulous. And there I met a chap called David Pinchover, who's an accordion player, Orthodox Jewish accordion player, and he invited me to play with him in his group, which was called Klezmer Trio. And we have done oodles and oodles and oodles and hundreds of chuppahs and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and Jewish functions ever since. However, we actually don't play. We play some klezmer, but it's actually play a lot of other things like Israeli music, Sephardic music, Hasidic music as well. So it's a big mix. The thing that really got me totally hooked was hearing Alicia Svigals's CD Fiddle,
Mhm.
which came out in I think 1997, or maybe that's when I bought it, and I just I just loved it. I just totally loved that, that recording and her playing. I actually rang her up in New York and had emails first of all, and then rang her up in New York to try and find out how she did various ornaments and so on. And eventually, I realised this is not good enough. So I ended up applying for funding and so on for years. It didn't work. So eventually, went over there with my wife Kathy and our two little kids, 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we stayed at the White Youth Hostel in New York, and it meant I could walk around to Alicia's place every day for I think it was a week or 10 days and have lessons, which was fabulous. And 10 years later, I did the same thing, except that time she was living in upstate New York on the lakes, which was very pretty. So, yeah, and after the first time also, or just before that, I formed my own group, which was called Klezmeritis, which is called Klezmeritis. So, yeah, and I also play that music with Bohemian Knights, the duo from Klezmeritis. We probably play even more. But I've also played with people like Leo Rosner, who was the accordion player from Schindler's List, and his family hired me and David Kreiser, who's the bass player from Klezmania and now Klezmeritis, hired us to accompany Leo Rosner making a CD because amazingly he'd totally dominated the Jewish music scene for decades, but I think he had one recording. Anyway, so we were part of a recording project to play his music, which again was a mixture of klezmer and Hasidic and Israeli and other things, including jazz. So yeah, good fun.
Question here: is Hasidic music not always klezmer? There's a good one.
Is Hasidic music not always klezmer? No, no. What do you reckon, Ilana? I think you're more knowledgeable in this area.
Oh, well, when we talk about klezmer, we're generally talking about the repertoire that Eastern European professional Jewish folk musicians used to play at weddings. It's a mixture
Yeah,
of dances and
yeah,
slow songs that you play at the table that people pay you more to play. And so that's the kind of repertoire, and it includes a couple of things like maybe a waltz or a polonaise or something like that.
mazurka.
That's, I mean, they just used to call it playing Jewish. That's in
Yeah,
America, I'm told that's what it was called. It was just called playing Jewish music. Nowadays we call it klezmer. But Hasidic
I,
music tends to be, I don't know if I'm correct me, you've probably done more Hasidic weddings than I have, but more of this singing Nigunim, more upbeat, more kind of rocky. They quite like to bring a lot of tunes in from surrounding cultures and make them, they sort of Jewishize music so that they're always expanding, and they do quite a lot of their own composition. So it might be a lot
yeah,
more poppy than what you think of as klezmer music, which sounds a bit old-fashioned and European.
yeah, that's right. It's a lot of pop things. So sometimes I'm brought in as a token violinist, along with a drum kit, electric guitar, electric bass, a horn section, etc. So I think I'm there just to look good because I'm a fiddle player, and fiddles are the old thing. And I rip out a few rock type solos if that's what they want. I think the interesting thing about because we're talking about Nigunim partly here, the wordless songs, Jewish wordless songs. I used to think that it was a thing that came from the Hasidic tradition, but thanks to some of the notes that you sent through Ilana and Beregovski's book, Jews were singing wordless songs before that. So that's interesting. But the Hasidim really took it on, and they said that singing these wordless songs was a way to be uplifted, a way to be close to God, and most importantly, a really communal, positive thing.
That's right.
Not sure if I answered that question.
I think that's covered it probably. Yeah, it seemed to me when I was thinking about this project that it was a good one for lockdown because they're supposed to take you away from your everyday chaos. And I just wanted to, Ernie, not to delve too much into your personal history, but I suddenly realised that Nigunim had been part of my family. We were quite secular,
Yeah,
but my grandfathers and my father were all brought up Orthodox, and one of my grandmothers. And I realised that at the occasional Passover meal or something like that, there'd be some table banging and some sort of singing, and it hadn't really occurred to me that this was Nigunim. But I wondered if you'd had any of that in your family.
Um, No, my family background is, I don't know if you can see behind me there, that's a poster of the 1998 Jewish Cultural Festival in Krakow that I went to, and it's also where my father comes from. But he was from a sort of upper class Jewish family, and they I think they weren't particularly into a lot of Jewish customs and so on. And I don't know much more about the genealogy there. My mother's side, though, my mother came from Hungary, Slovakia, whatever. Um, my uncle might disagree, but so I know because there's a genealogy that we've got that goes back to the I think 13th, 14th century or something. That there were a lot of rabbis in there, and there was a synagogue. Actually went to the synagogue um, in Bitsya, where the village where they came from. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but maybe Bill can tell me later on whether he ever heard this sort of singing when he was there.
Mm.
Yeah,
How about another tune?
yeah. So I'm really loving talking about Hasidic things. I'm really loving this the other tune that I'm going to be recording for YouTube for the project. Um, can I just tell you the first tune I played, number 90? Um, that was from the handwritten notes of an unknown cantor. That's all we know. This one I'm about to play is number 107. It's just called Khsidisher Nign, and it's from a 1913 phonogram recording um, from the Ukraine. So Yai dai yai dai 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 yai dai 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 ya da dai 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 da 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 dai hai dai yai dai 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 yai dai 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 ya da dai 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 da 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 dai yai dai dai da da dai da dai 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 yai dai da 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 dai da dai dai ya da dai dai yai dai da 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 dai da dai dai yai dai 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 yai dai da 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 dai da dai 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 dai. Hey, da 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 da. Hey, da 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 yay, da da. Hey, da 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 da. Hey, da 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 da.
That's fantastic, Ernie. Thank you. People might be asking why we're doing it on fiddles.
Because fiddles are the best instruments.
Exactly. I think that's a very good answer, isn't it? Really. I mean, I also
Can,
do it because I can't really sing, and but I think these songs develop because you're not really supposed to play instruments on the Sabbath, and so people used to sing instead. But we do have recordings of violins accompanying Nigunim, not on the Sabbath, at family occasions, and Beregovski actually talks about that amateurs often played the fiddle and would play along with the Nigunim. So we know that there's some justification.
sometimes, I mean, one of the things I do in Melbourne also is sometimes is to play or sing when in the wedding when the bride is walking from her home to the synagogue, to the shul. So sometimes everyone's just singing, but sometimes it's just the violin and accordion, and sometimes it's all together. Could I play a slow tune from my friend Jane?
That sounds nice. Please do.
Um, there's also a backstory for this. Probably one of the first times I played for the men's room, just before the wedding. So before a Jewish wedding, the Orthodox wedding, there's the men are all in one room, and the women are in another room, and the bride is surrounded by her friends, and the groom is in another room. Anyway, so uh, I was very scared the first time this happened because all of a sudden the band leader said to me, "You go with the men, we'll go with the women." And I didn't actually know if I had enough tunes up my sleeve or what I would do. And they're all sitting around praying or occasionally singing a bit, and occasionally there would be a bit of side play. Anyway, this is a very sad, mournful tune which I played, and down the end of the table I could see a quite old man, I think a rabbi, um, almost crying. I'll tell you why in a minute. So um, I think I'd learnt that from a cassette from the clarinet player Gura Feidman, and so I didn't know much about it. I just thought beautiful tune. Anyway, the old man later on beckoned to me to come over, and he said that tune came from a particular Hasidic court in Russia where they were famous for the Nigunim that they composed. And this was a general thing in the Hasidim. They had competitions who could write the best fiddler song, best Nigunim. Anyway, this particular court was very famous for that. And he said there were pogroms. Pogroms came along, and they were all killed. They were all killed by the Cossacks. The only thing that survived was that tune. It was just, I don't know, it still sends shivers down thinking about that. I, I could play another nigun, a totally different one, slightly happy one, or I'm happy to answer questions.
Can I ask you a question, Ernie? How did the
Can't see who
tune
it is.
survive? How did the
Sorry,
tune survive?
That's what we don't know, Jane. Or what I don't know. I've never been able to find out more. I've never heard anyone else verify that story. Um, but sometimes going with an oral tradition makes sense. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was something of a miracle that this collection survived. People thought it had been taken away.
Oh,
Gone?
You can tell me this, Ilana. I've been wondering. I remember I think it was in 1998, I went to Budapest to visit Bob Cohen, who's a great fiddle player, klezmer fiddle player, and he a very different style. And I'm pretty sure that's where I first heard the story of the missing wax cylinders. And I heard this story from him that the wax cylinders from some of the Beregovski collection, I might have forgotten all this, so please tell me if I'm wrong, that they'd been discovered, but there was only very few, there wasn't much of a chance to get them out of Russia, number one. Apparently the mafia wanted to get hold of them and sell them. Somehow Israel got them out, and they had a special machine that could read them, because apparently the theory was that you'd only read them once and they'd be gone. By the way, I just saw someone say, yes, that tune I played before is also called Shalom Aleichem. That's a later naming of a tune. Often Nigunim have words added later on, which is, that's a good thing to do. And sometimes it goes the other way around as well. Yeah. What was there a question? I can't remember.
I think there's lots of myth around the cylinders most of these tunes came from field recordings, either in the teens or in the 20s or 30s or even the 40s, some of them. And myth and legend around what happened to them.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing this stuff has survived.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was actually taken off the cylinders in Kiev. I don't think it went to Israel.
Oh, really? Okay.
Our collections there, but this particular collection, a lot of the work was done by Lyudmila Sholokova, who was a librarian at the Vernadsky Library. And before the Iron Curtain came down, she was already working on this collection, cataloguing it. There is a story that the Germans took it away when they had overrun the Ukraine and Kiev. The whole library was evacuated, along with Beregovski, who looked after and kind of worked on the collection. Were evacuated to sort of deep into Soviet Russia. And when he came back, it wasn't there anymore. But it was eventually rediscovered, and there were also bits of it in St. Petersburg, I think. There's still a lot of mystery there, but we do have transfers of some of the recordings, and you can buy them. That link I put down there, they've made 10 CDs of various different aspects of the collection, collected in different places in field recordings, crackly old field recordings.
Yeah, that's great. I've got time to play the Khsidisher Nign.
Oh, I hope so. Please do, Ernie. Please do.
And I have to stand because have you been to Khsidisher?
Never.
So I went in 2008 to Montreal as a 1-week Klezmer intensive Yiddish song, Nigunim, etc., etc. And every year, I don't know how long they've done this for, 10, maybe a lot more. They everyone goes and walks up a hill backwards. Apparently it comes from a tradition in Eastern Europe. I can't remember who discovered it, found it. And so you can, if you search on YouTube I don't know, I think it's Khsidisher Nign or backwards Nign. It's a great thing. So our duo Bohemian Nights, we play this and we record it, and also have to stand. I'm not going to walk backwards though, but I have to walk. great Niggun. It's a great tradition.
What a great tune. Thanks so much, Ernie. Thanks for giving us a really good survey of the different kind of Niggunim out there and also your experience with them. It's great to have
Thank you.
you as part of
Thank you, Ilana. It's a fantastic project, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And Ilana's got a lot more guests coming up who are fabulous, and you'll learn a lot more and get some great tunes. Tunes, we call them.
Tunes.
Yeah.